Well, Professor Mike Tildesley, who is a member of SAGE subgroup, the Scientific Pandemic Influenza Group, is with us now. Hello to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on the programme this morning. COVID cases are still rising. It would appear at quite the rate, 14 times more people in hospital than there were this time last year. How concerned should we be, sir? Good morning.
Well, I've seen this statistic this morning, and I have to say I'm quite confused as to how this 14 times has been calculated. Because if we look at the UK dashboard, it does suggest that I think there are around about 10,000 patients in hospital with coronavirus now, compared with about 14,000 on the same day last year. So it does appear to be lower currently. However, it was a lot higher through September and October this year compared with last year. So it may be that that's where this 14 times figure is coming from. So it's a little bit confusing. The key thing for me, actually, that we do need to monitor is the trend. Obviously, with a high number of patients in hospital, it is concerning. And of course, we do want to reverse that. There is early evidence that actually cases are coming down. But of course, it does take a little bit of time before that's reflected in hospital admissions and deaths that are concerningly high. So clearly, it does need monitoring. And the key thing for me is it does show we're not out of the woods yet. Booster vaccination campaign is very, very key, and it's really important that we get as many people out to get those booster jabs as soon as they are eligible to do so.
10 million people, I believe. That's what we're hearing from the Health Secretary over the weekend. 10 million people have had their booster jabs. Not enough is what you're saying, I'm guessing.
Well, it's certainly getting better. It was slow a few weeks ago. We were seeing reports that almost around about 45% of individuals who should have been eligible had not yet had their booster vaccinations, but it does appear to have accelerated. I think on Saturday we had the highest number of booster vaccines in a single day, around about 350,000. So it is going in the right direction, but there clearly is work to do. For people over 50, for people, vulnerable adults, immunity will be starting to wane from the second jab. So it is really important that acceleration continues, and hopefully we get as many people protected as possible as we move into the colder months.
Yeah, latest figures I was looking at was 409,000 people given their boosters on Saturday. But I'm going to go with your figures rather than mine, because you know.
I trust UK if that's the figure you have.
OK, fantastic. How important is it to potentially look at penalising people if they don't have their vaccinations?
I think it's a really difficult one. And I think this is where we get into very, very dangerous territory. I think it is important to encourage people to come out and get their jabs. And I think it is actually worth remembering that even with a very successful vaccination campaign, there are some populations where vaccine uptake is much lower. It does appear to be areas of high deprivation. Certain minority ethnic communities, vaccine uptake is lower. And I would want to go down the route of encouraging individuals in those communities, and maybe sort of getting local leaders involved to try and encourage vaccine uptake is really what's important, so that we can protect those communities as we move towards the winter.
How concerned are you about a potential winter lockdown, which is sort of, I suppose, slightly being nudged at, but not really, as a way of saying if you don't have your booster, then potentially this might happen?
Well, I think we were a long way away from thinking in those terms. I think that, clearly there is a situation that if the NHS is under severe pressure, if the number of deaths sadly starts to increase, then of course, obviously, there may be discussions around whether more restrictions need to come in. I would hope that with a very successful vaccination campaign, the idea of a winter lockdown is a long way away, but it is certainly true that if we don't get good immunity across the population, there may need to be perhaps further measures taken. So it's really important, as I said earlier, that we encourage people to come forward when eligible to take those booster jabs.
And do you think we'll have to have a booster every year?
I think it's possible. I remember having these sorts of discussions about 9 months ago when the vaccinations were starting to roll out, that it's possible that this virus could become endemic, so circulate in the population every year in the way that flu does. And possibly at this time of year, we're having to go out and get our COVID jabs in the same way that a lot of people are currently getting their flu jabs. Another important thing, of course, Kay, that people need to do as we get into the winter is go out and get their flu jabs.
Have you had yours?
I have indeed, yes. My university has supplied the flu jab, so I had mine last week, in fact.
OK, and have you had your booster yet? You're not old enough, are you?
I'm not old enough, I'm afraid. No, I may look it, Kay, but I'm not quite old enough to be
Professor, it's good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.